Welcome to Pellowe Talk. I'm your host, Dave Pellowe, and today I've got a special interview with Dr. Debbie Garratt.
Oh, it's not enough to do nothing. It's time for us to do something.
Now, Debbie appeared on the panel show that we're now doing on Tuesday nights, Pellowe Talk Live. It's hashtag not Q&A. It's an excellent show that I encourage you to tune into if you haven't already seen it before, but that's going to be coming every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Sydney time. There was a lot of people who commented how much they appreciated Debbie's insights, and I knew we needed to have more time to get into it, but there's a lot of people who actually expressed how much they found Debbie's insights into the topic of adoption very interesting. So allow me to introduce Dr. Debbie Garratt. She's a clinical nurse consultant and researcher. And in recent year or so, she's completed her doctoral thesis and obtained a PhD in alarmist gatekeeping and the theory, a theory she's developed on discourse strategies that manipulate and control. And I first came across Debbie as someone who you had an organization called Real Choices. And of course, that has to do with the topic of abortion, where people who are pro-abortion like to describe themselves as pro-choice in an ironic or if not deceitful euphemism, which actually means they're only in favor of one choice. And the reason we're doing this topic, especially this month, and it's always a pet topic of mine, but it's now less than 2 weeks away from Sanctity of Life Sunday, the Sunday nearest, the 26th of May each year. And this year, that's the 24th of May. So looking forward to celebrating that. But please jump to your feet and welcome to the show, Dr. Debbie Garratt. Welcome, Debbie.
Hi, Dave. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to having a bit more of a chat on the issue.
Yeah, look, you do. There's a couple of things I want to test you on, or ask more questions is probably the right way. I like to interrogate a position to be able to understand it, and I'm happy to be persuaded I'm wrong, because I don't want to be right. I just want truth. So if I'm wrong, I can get there, and that's all I want off anybody else as well, lefty or otherwise. Now. Tell me your doctoral thesis. What's your PhD in, your actual qualification, broadly speaking?
The qualification is a Doctor of Philosophy. What I did was a what's called a grounded theory study, which is about not so much trying to prove or disprove some kind of theory or theoretical position that you go into a subject with, but developing a theory from the data. So looking at what's in your particular field and topical area, and building a picture or explanation for what occurs. So what I did was the research was in the context of abortion, and spoke
more broadly. Is it a PhD
Sure.
in welfare, in psychology, in nursing?
It was done through a school of nursing.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's a PhD in nursing?
No, it is just a Doctor of Philosophy, as opposed to and it wouldn't have mattered what school I had undertaken it in. It's just called a Doctor of Philosophy.
Very cool. All right, so more specific to the PhD then, dominant discourse theory.
It was, It didn't begin as a study of dominant discoursing. It began as a study of where I interviewed, in a broad sense, practitioners who were any kind of professional person who might come into contact with a woman who had had an abortion and was seeking services. And what I wanted to know was, how do the practitioners manage discussions of abortion if they are raised by women? And what I discovered when I began interviewing practitioners, and I interviewed mental health nurses, doctors, psychologists, so a mental health nurses, a fairly broad range of people, was that I thought that what I would discover is that level of knowledge on the issue might impact one's ability to interact with women. What I discovered was that their level of knowledge really had nothing to do with their interactions with women, but fears around what they should or could or couldn't say were inhibiting those interactions. And that then led me back to the discourse, because I'm hearing people say, well, my professional body would be concerned about me talking about that, or my colleagues wouldn't like that, or I never know what the woman's values are, so I'm a bit scared to talk to her about, A, B, or C. And so it became a study of the discourse as opposed to a study of the particular interaction.
That's remarkable, because I'm aware that APRA will receive a complaint from a person with no standing in Australia at all. A Twitter troll could report any clinical practitioner in Australia and actually severely interrupt their professional life and personal life, and ask and demand they give answer and show cause because of their position on not wanting to harm a preborn living human. And so this fear, like the complaint or the grounds, perhaps the pretense for such an investigation would be they're wanting to make sure there's no adverse healthcare going on, that there's not women being denied proper healthcare. And that's a motherhood statement, which we can all agree with. We don't want to see doctors giving bad advice or refusing treatment where it's genuinely medically indicated. And there's great debate on whether or not abortion is ever medically indicated, or to the extent at which it is claimed. Some of the pro-abortion advocates that I've interviewed would say that it's medically indicated if only the woman wants it, if the mood takes her, which I don't think is quite the definition of medical indication, but they're more qualified than me, so they get the final say on that, theoretically. However, what you're telling me is that the fear of censorship by people like APRA, the media and others, that's having an adverse effect on the treatment options that medical professionals are willing to consider and actually offer in their treatment, which I think that's a profound observation.
Absolutely. The self-censorship really surprised me, particularly from, and I never looked for people who were particularly ideologically aligned, and I spoke to people from a variety of ideologies, and some offered that information, some I knew, others I didn't ask the question, I don't know, because it didn't turn out to be a really relevant factor, because the process of self-censorship happened across the board. And it doesn't just happen from people who might be concerned about, can I tell this woman about the potential of mental health harm after abortion? It also happens from people who are abortion advocates, who are more concerned about the principle of rights to do with abortion than they are about whether those rights are actually enacted. So I found some really interesting research from America where focus groups were run on people providing what they term abortion care, and they talked about things like, they labelled some of the talk danger talk, and that was things like telling women that there might be lots of pain, or they might regret abortion, or there might be mental health adverse effects. They're things they felt they couldn't talk about because it might harm abortion rights. So that was really interesting to me as well, that the self-censorship occurs across the board.
And if I can paraphrase in a politically loaded sense or politically real sense, commentate on that, essentially they were worried about the facts getting in the way of their political agenda.
Yes, yes, absolutely correct. The underlying
which is very anti-science.
It is,
anti-clinical best practice.
Yeah, the underlying principle in alarmist gatekeeping is this rights of abortion, this idea that that abortion gives women autonomy and freedom, and it's an enactment of autonomy and freedom and rights. My experience in talking to dozens, if not hundreds, of post-abortive women is that few have abortions as an act of freedom. They have abortion as an act of being trapped.
Yeah.
And few have all of the information they need before they get there. But the coercion around abortion is huge.
Yep.
Abortion advocates don't want to talk about that because they fear it will impact rights. They don't care that the women aren't enacting rights.
Yep. Let's move to a intermediate topic before our objective of the topic of adoption, and that is the topic of actual choices that women have. So, an abortion activist is pro-abortion, and they call themselves pro-choice, when the reality is that they're only pro-one choice. And this is demonstrated and evidenced not by my partisan rhetoric or trying to make them look bad. The reality is, there's no funding for other choices. There's no investment. There's no resourcing. There's no practical, proactive, positive support, especially at taxpayer funding, for the advocacy or the offering of any other choice, such as enabling the mother to keep and raise the baby herself, or adoption, or any of the other choices that there may be. And they're probably the three main ones. Would you agree they're the three main ones? Kill the baby, keep the baby, give the baby away.
They are the three options that get discussed, yes.
Right. So they're the three main ones that are out there. And if there's three choices, I only see pro-abortion advocates being pro-one choice.
Correct.
And so, I mean, feel free to opine on this after me, but my opinion is that the very least we can do to reduce the incidence of the human rights disaster of abortion in our country is not focus on abortion first, but focus on proactive support of women and remove the fear of unplanned pregnancies, and actually be pro-choice. Like, would you like at least two choices? Can we, if you're thinking you want to kill your baby, and let's not mince words, while we actually care about you, and that's a very traumatic thing to do, and to live with, and so caring for you means caring for both of you. So how do we support you? Pro-life people like me will get accused by cynical people who aren't interested in truth of only being pro-birth and not caring about anything else, and that's simply a lie from the pit of hell. I care deeply about the woman and the impacts that whatever choice she makes will have on her. And I care about the pregnancy, and I care about the child forever after. And that's why there's so many post-birth charities which are organized at helping underprivileged people, etc. And the churches that I'm involved in are certainly proactively part of that solution. So let's clear that up. But what I want to see as part of that wider approach, a holistic approach to caring for women, is a proactive support that also receives taxpayer funding, because pregnancy resource centres are severely underfunded and severely in short supply, and they don't get resources because of the political liability of any politician looking like they're anti-choice. It's a politically loaded strategy, but what an important resource that we're neglecting. Your turn. Opine about how we can better support women, and let's keep this to 3 to 5 minutes, and so we can move on to adoption.
Sure. There's two things there for me in terms of pregnancy support services. No, we don't have anywhere near enough in our country. I have a particular view about how they would be better structured, and that meets in the middle with my other view that what we need is a real cultural shift around the valuing of motherhood. And family in general. Many young women are seeking abortions because they believe the the rhetoric of children interrupt your lives. You have to get an education first. You have to be cemented in your career. There's plenty of time to have babies later. There isn't plenty of time to have babies later for women.
That's right.
Fertility begins declining in the early 30s at a time when many, many women are saying, actually, maybe I'll think about having a baby now. So women are being...
And it dropped off the cliff in your 40s.
Absolutely. Women are being misinformed right from the beginning, and they're being told that, they're being taught about things that matter more than having babies that can wait. And look, for some, that's a valid decision and a valid choice, but you don't make that choice unless you get all the information with which to make it. So that's one thing. So I think cultural change is really important. With pregnancy centres, I think that many of our pregnancy centres in Australia are kind of missing the mark a little bit in having this kind of targeting of adoption-minded women. Once a woman has considered abortion-minded women. Once a woman has considered abortion, she's often at an abortion clinic as her first port of call, not a pregnancy centre. So I think pregnancy centres can do a lot to begin cultural change in their communities by supporting all women who are pregnant, by promoting...
I'm sorry, I didn't turn my phone off.
That's okay. By promoting services that encourage all women to feel supported. So, some of the strategies around that are things that I've implemented in different communities, such as, buy a marquee and some comfy chairs and change tables and set up at all outdoor events. So there's somewhere nice and friendly and wonderful and comforting to come and sit and nurse and change a baby. They're very small things. Contact local eateries, find out who's family friendly, where can you take babies, put out a directory. So these are just a couple of very small projects that I've had running in one particular community in Victoria, where what happens then is you build a sense of family and community and welcoming within a community.
Those are such good ideas.
They are very small things. They have a huge, huge impact. One community in Victoria where I worked with a team and with the local business board, local business community board, I think they were called.
Chamber of Commerce or something?
Some sort of chamber of commerce, yep. So where we worked with all the businesses in the local shopping district to ask them things like, are you pram friendly? Are you breastfeeding friendly? Do you have a child's menu? Can you put a comfy chair in your in a private area where a woman might come in and nurse a baby, or a dad come in and bottle feed a baby? Could you allow your staff toilet to be used for a mum with an anxious toilet training toddler who simply needs to go right away? And then signs were put on different windows. So you walk down the street, the shopping street in this community, and a woman can immediately see, oh, I've got my 2-year-old and he needs to go to the toilet really quickly. I can pop into this bank and use this staff toilet. Oh, look, there's a real estate agent with a feeding sign. I can walk in and they will have a comfortable chair and bring me a glass of water so I can sit down and nurse my baby.
Debbie. Have you got a blog post which summarises all these ideas?
I
want to make it a page on the Sanctity of Life Sunday web. It's just a resource, because that whole idea is, how do we promote a culture of life? And promoting a culture of valuing motherhood is a very sensible step. Let's put this together and put it on that webpage.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. And they're things that I think if every pregnancy centre did, if when you want to start establishing a pregnancy centre in your community, rather than hang a shingle out to say pregnancy counselling, free pregnancy tests, we're here for abortion-minded women, get out into your community and start offering services to every woman who is pregnant, every family expecting a new baby deserves support, deserves to be nurtured. We're all challenged in different ways at different times, and we all need the services. You build a whole different kind of community when you do that.
Love it, Debbie. All right, let's move on to adoption. I do want to encourage the viewers, if you're just tuning in, haven't heard of Debbie Garratt before, go back and watch the episodes on my YouTube channel from Tuesday night, the 12th of May. And towards the end of that episode, if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty, it might be the last 10 minutes, 15 or 20 minutes. Debbie's got some interesting thoughts. We're going to try and take it from scratch now, but there's some good things to have a chat about there. I hate to be a tease, but we're going to have that chat with Debbie about adoption in the next episode. We're going to break this into 2 parts because the chat about adoption is a whole hour long. Make sure you don't miss it, the next episode of Pellowe Talk.
It's time for us to do something.